just waiting for the recording to come up. Just going to text IT because normally the recording does not take this long. Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor, our live streaming is up and working, and I see that it is 5:53, so if you wish, you can begin. I do see that we have quorum. We do have two other councillors who are just attempting to get their links, and they'll be joining us shortly.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. We will indeed start the meeting then. Good afternoon, Council, members of SLT. I see we have quorum. So we are partaking today in a public meeting under the Planning Act. The date is Monday, January 18th, 2021. Time is approximately 5:34. And next up is the adoption of agenda. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am just going to read into the record a short PowerPoint presentation, just advising the members of the public and the participants of our procedures. If Ms. Leach could just take a moment to put that onto sharing our screen, that would be wonderful. Oh, here we go. It looks like we're just, bear with us for one moment while Ms. Leach puts on the PowerPoint for us. Thank you. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act, Monday, January 18th, 2021, 5:30 p.m. Public meeting under the Planning Act. All Town of Pelham in-person public meetings have been canceled. Instead, the town is holding all meetings electronically via Zoom. Please note, no decisions have been made prior to this public meeting. The Planning Department will be providing a presentation regarding the subject applications. Participants are reminded, ensure your background is free from offensive or vulgar material. If inappropriate material is visible, you'll be removed from the meeting. Vulgar or offensive language will not be tolerated. If inappropriate language is used, you will be removed from the meeting. Participant microphones and video cameras will remain off until they are called to speak. Once your comments have been heard by council, your microphone will be muted and staff will turn off your camera. Decorum. The public meeting under the Planning Act is a formal public hearing requiring decorum, meaning All comments are to be made through the chair. If you have pre-registered to speak, you will be given an opportunity to address council at the public portion of the meeting. If you are live streaming and wish to submit a comment live, please email clerks@pelham.ca. Please note, comments must be received during the public portion of the meeting, otherwise they will not be considered. Disrespectful comments will not be tolerated. Cheering, booing, or hissing from the gallery will not be tolerated. Please note, if decorum is lost, the meeting may be recessed and persons asked to leave. Public portion of the meeting. To allow for an efficient meeting, each member of the public will be given an opportunity to speak to council during the public portion of the meeting. Please note, after all members of the public have been given the opportunity to speak, the applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to address the public comments, concerns at one time. Please note, all comments stated and received electronically form part of the public record and will be considered by planning staff when preparing the recommendation report for council's consideration. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the planner responsible for this application in writing as soon as possible. Shannon LaRocque, Senior Planner, 20 Pelham Town Square, P.O. Box 400, Fonthill, Ontario, LOS 1E0, slarock@pelham.ca. This contact information can be found at the Town of Pelham's website. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt that the agenda for the January 18th, 2021 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as amended to include the addendum items 4.31, 4.311, 4.32, and 4.321. Is there any discussion on the matter?
Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hildebrandt that the agenda for the January 18th, 2020 public meeting under the Planning Act, special meeting of Committee of the Whole, be adopted as amended. For the vote, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries.
Okay. Now, Madam Clerk, next is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Do any councillors have a declaration to make regarding the pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? I see none, Madam Clerk. Please note.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have so noted. That does bring us to item number 4 on the agenda, and I do have the notice requirements to read into the record. And those notice requirements are that the Town of Pelham application for zoning bylaw amendment 1522 Pelham Street, file number A1-10-20, a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the use of the property for a 4-story mixed-use building containing 1 ground floor commercial unit and 21 above ground floor residential units. The Planning Act requires under Section 34 that council must hold at least one public meeting for the purpose of informing the public in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. This public meeting has been called to satisfy this requirement, noting that this meeting was provided by prepaid first-class mail to all persons who are listed as owners in the last revised assessment roll within 120 meters of the subject property on December 18th, 2020. The notice provided information on the property and the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. In addition to providing information, we will also receive any comments which any member of the public may wish to offer. If you wish to receive a copy of the notice of decision, please contact the clerk in writing as soon as possible. Contact information is available on the town's website and will also be displayed on the last slide of the staff presentation to follow shortly. If a person or public body would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of the Town of Pelham to the local appeal planning tribunal, but the person or persons does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions at the Town of Pelham before the bylaw is passed, the person's public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. In closing, we stress that at this point, no decisions have been made on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and therefore any comments received will be taken into account by council in their consideration. Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And we do have Shannon LaRocque, our senior planner here, and she does have a presentation to share with council.
Thank you. Ms. LaRocque, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public. The public meeting tonight pertains to property located at 1522 Pelham Street, and the subject is an application for zoning bylaw amendment that has been received by the town. The property is located on the west side of Pelham Street, north of Highway 20, and the surrounding land uses to the north are a residential retirement home and single detached dwellings. To the east, there are some commercial uses, including medical use or a medical office use and residential uses. To the south, mixed use buildings, and to the west, Marlene Stewart Strait Park. The application for zoning bylaw amendment proposes or requests to change the zoning to permit a 4-story mixed-use building that contains a commercial ground floor unit and 21 apartment units. The proposed site layout shows the building to be located at the southeast portion of the property, with the driveway located along the northern side of the property. And there are 31 parking spaces being proposed, 10 of which will be located on the ground floor of the building with 3 stories above. 6 apartment dwellings are proposed to be 1-bedroom units, while the remaining units would be 2-bedroom units. Each would have their own private balcony. The proposed building elevation from Pelham Street is shown on the left side, and the building elevation from the northeast is shown on the right. That gives you a better idea of what that ground floor parking looks like with the 3 stories above. In terms of the applicable planning policy framework, the property is located within a settlement area in the provincial policy statement. And of course, in settlement areas, a mix of housing uses and types are encouraged, as well as densities that support transit and make good use of existing services and infrastructure. The property is within a delineated built-up area in the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. And the delineated built-up area also encourages a mix of residential and employment uses. The region's official plan designates the property urban built-up area, and within the urban built-up area, a full range of residential, commercial, industrial uses are permitted, subject to available services and infrastructure. The policies in the region's plan promote higher density development and growth that contribute to trying to make a range of employment and housing types. And the region's plan also sets a 15% intensification target for new development within the urban built-up area in the town of Pelham. The town's official plan designates the property as being within the downtown. The downtown designation permits a wide range of commercial uses, as well as medium and high density residential uses on the upper floors of buildings. Parks are also permitted, and accessory uses. The town's official plan also requires that when a building is proposed to exceed 3 stories, that a zoning bylaw amendment is obtained. The town's zoning bylaw zones the property as GC, general commercial, and the applicant is requesting a site-specific general commercial zone that would permit the 4-story height, as well as some site-specific regulations that would allow for the development as shown on the site plan. And those site-specific regulations include an increase in the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 50%, an increase in the maximum gross floor area from 50% to 123% of the lot area. The regulations pertaining to the apartment units, it would be an increase to 71% from the current 50% that's permitted for gross floor area that's allowed to be used for dwelling units. There is typically a requirement for minimum landscaped amenity area of 55 square meters per unit. And in this case, the applicant's requesting that that be deleted. The maximum building height for residential uses is not permitted or is not specified in the GC zone. And in this case, of course, the request is to go to 4 stories. The parking requirement for apartment uses in the downtown is normally what's equal to 1.5 spaces per unit. And in this case, the request is to go down to 1.2 spaces per unit. And there is a standard requirement in the zoning for a 3-meter wide planting strip between a parking area and a residential use. In terms of this property, that would be along the north side, and the applicant has requested that that be reduced to 0 meters. A number of technical reports were submitted in support of this application, including an arborist report prepared by Beacon Environmental, a stable slope assessment prepared by WSP Canada, a stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 archaeological assessments, which were prepared by Detritus Consulting, a functional servicing report prepared by Upper Canada Consultants, and a planning justification report also prepared by Upper Canada Consultants. And the slide and the planning report make reference to this urban design brief prepared by IBI Group, but that was included in error. With respect to this application, the urban design considerations are addressed in the planning justification report that's been prepared by Upper Canada. The application was circulated to a number of commenting agencies and town departments, and a number of comments were received. From Canada Post, no comments or conditions were requested. From Public Works, some technical comments were provided about the preliminary engineering reports and plans. The Building Division advised that building permits would be required. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority offered no objections and advised that they were satisfied with the conclusions of the slope stability assessment and that the construction would not negatively impact the slope, which is located along the rear of the property on the west side. The Niagara region has withheld comments at this time. It is the region's practice to request an environmental protection zone where a property abuts a species at risk, and the arborist report that was prepared by Beacon identified a species at risk on the neighboring park property. And so until we receive comments from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks with respect to that and what an appropriate setback is, the region has withheld their comments. The Planning Division has advised that the dwelling is included on the draft register of properties of cultural heritage interest, which is being prepared by staff. That register is not in place at this time, but staff would require the ability to photograph the dwelling prior to any demolition taking place. And I would further add to that if the applicant is successful in obtaining council's approval of the zoning bylaw amendment, they will still be required to enter into a site plan agreement with the town that would deal with all of the detailed design, including stormwater management and landscaping and all of those items. At the time that this presentation and the staff report were prepared, no comments had been received from the public. However, a number of comments have arrived, and I'll provide a summary. I know they are included on council's agenda in full. Bill and Michelle Schwanger have advised that they are concerned about the increase in traffic and the insufficient parking being provided on the property. They're worried that without parking on the property, vehicles will spill onto the roadways and cause further congestion. They also feel that the proposal is not in keeping with downtown Fonthill. They feel that the building should be reduced to 3 stories and 14 or fewer apartments. And Rashpal Garcia, president of 1485312 Ontario Inc., has provided some comments as well, and I understand we'll be expanding on those tonight. In summary, Rashpal believes the height at 4 stories is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, is concerned about traffic impacts on the 2-lane road, impacts on privacy, and loss of sunlight. Rashpal believes that the development is not necessary in this location and feels the application is against zoning principles. Rashpal is concerned that the property may have cultural heritage interest and strongly objects and believes that the current zoning should be retained. Consistent with all public meetings held by the town, no decisions or recommendations will happen tonight. We're solely here to hear from the public and council and collect information. Once all of the information has been received, and in this case, also comments from the region and the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, staff will be considering all and then preparing a recommendation report for council's consideration and receipt at a later date. Oops. And if anyone wishes to receive notices that hasn't been in touch and provided their contact information as of yet, please do so. My contact information is available here, and I'll be happy to get information to you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Ms. Luak. Madam Clerk?
Through you, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do see that we do have Councillor Hahn and I believe Councillor Stewart as well, who has entered the meeting, so thank you. Just as a matter of housekeeping, I just would like to ask if each of you have a pecuniary interest to declare, just for the record.
No.
Thank you. I do see Councillor Stewart shaking your head no. Thank you, Shannon. That would bring us to the agent, which is Craig Rowe at Upper Canada Consultants, and I believe he too has a PowerPoint presentation for council.
Okay. Mr. Rowe, you have the floor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Rowe. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants, representing the owner of the property, and our address is 30 Hanover Drive in St. Catharines. So as alluded to by the clerk, we'll just be providing a brief overview, a little bit more detail about what the development entails to help guide our conversation tonight. Madam Clerk, you can see this and hear me, correct?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. So the applications that's before council this evening pertain to 1522 Pelham Street in Fonthill. The subject lands are located within the downtown and are zoned general commercial and city zoning bylaw. The property is approximately 0.14 hectares in size, is located on the west side of Pelham Street. The subject lands are flanked to the south by existing 3-story mixed-use building. To the north, 3-story, this is the Short Hills Retirement Villa. There's some commercial development over to the east, and then Marlene Stewart Strike Park that's located to the west of the subject lands. So in terms of property context, our subject lands are located within downtown Fonthill, and they're also situated along the municipally designated intensification corridor, which is Pelham Street in this case. The subject lands are designated as urban area and built-up area in the region's official plan. The policy direction for urban and built-up areas generally encourage development to occur on existing municipal services, in walkable areas or those provided with public transit, and in an intensified manner to avoid undue absorption of valuable greenfield lands or expansions to urban boundaries. The regional plan also emphasizes the importance of developing locally designated intensification corridors or areas. Pelham Street, as noted, is designated as an intensification corridor in the city's official, or in the town's official plan. The town's official plan, as approved in 2012, also designates the subject lands as downtown. This designation promotes the development of mixed-use buildings with additional focus on the integration of residential units within the downtown area. specifically policy B1243A of the official plan. It does permit buildings taller than 4 stories in the downtown area. However, they're subject to a zoning bylaw amendment, so more detailed analysis can be carried out when considering those applications. So in terms of the proposed development, our client's proposing a 4-story mixed-use building. The development plan includes a 104 square meter commercial unit at grade. So that's located out here along the front. There's also 21 residential apartments that are spread over floors 2 to 3. So this would be the commercial unit at grade, and then above on floors 2, 3, and 4. Each of these floors will contain 7 residential units, and there's a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms on each floor. The parking for the development is going to be provided at grade underneath the structure. So although the front of the building, this will be the commercial structure out here, there'll be pillars here, and all or most of the parking will be provided underneath the building, and then there'll be some outdoor exposure for these spaces, and then parking at the rear. This hatch line here delineates the full extent of the building. Excuse me, I just take a sip of water. So access to the site is provided via a single driveway from Pelham Street. And from here, this is where we're also going to provide our waste collection. This will be an enclosed earth bin module, so we'll be eligible for private waste collection on that. At the rear of the property, we also have a landscaped area. Originally, we had this all proposed as parking, which was it was supported by a geotechnical study. However, when we got the results back from our biologists who completed the arborist report, they noticed that there was a American chestnut tree that's on the town's property, and that is considered an endangered species. So that is, in speaking with our biologists, their recommendation was that given the situation of it and the setback from the property, there was likely no buffering requirements that would be that would need to be implemented through the plan. We've elected to provide a little bit of additional landscape to buffer that tree regardless. But this is one of the reasons that we're under on our parking that we asked for. But as alluded to by Shannon, we're also waiting for the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to issue a clearance, so we'll know what the mitigation measures and how much of a buffer we need to have. So in terms of the zoning bylaw, a lot of these provisions may have been able to be addressed through the Committee of Adjustment and Minor Variance, but due to that test in the official plan, and we're going up to a 4-story, we're required to come to Town Council to have consideration of the zoning bylaw amendment to allow that 4th floor. So in terms of what's been asked for, we've asked for a maximum lot coverage of 50%, where 40% is required. And the effect of this basically allows us to have 1 additional unit at the back of the building spread over 3 floors, so 3 additional units, allowing us to have additional residential development on the property. The minimum gross floor area for dwelling units, we're asking for 71%, whereas 50% is required. The town's policies, as well as regional policy and good planning principles, really indicate that this site is within a good area. It's very walkable. It's surrounded by a lot of services and transportation routes that are valuable. So it makes sense to increase the density on the property to be consistent with those objectives. In terms of our maximum building height, the zoning bylaw requires a height of 10.5 meters. We're requesting 13.0 meters. That's to the very top of the parapet. The ceiling height is about 12.5 meters on the architectural drawings, but this additional height we feel is compatible for this portion of the street. In terms of the minimum parking that's required, we're asking for 26 spaces, where 31 spaces would be required based on the equations outlined in the zoning bylaw. This equates to about 1.2 units or 1.2 spaces per unit. Just as an example, apartment buildings in the city of Welland require 1 space per unit. In the city of St. Catharines, they're 1.25. 1.5 is a bit of a higher range that we have now, but of course with the vintage of the zoning bylaw, I would anticipate that we may see that requirement quotient come down a little bit. In terms of the landscaped amenity area, we're requesting to provide 0 amount dedicated per unit, but our reasoning for that is every unit will have its own balcony located on the north side of the building. We also have that passive green space at the back of the property that folks could go out, sit and enjoy. And also we're next to the main municipal park in the town, so it makes perfect sense to assume that residents of this building would go and make use of that parkland, as well as walk throughout the downtown for recreation. In terms of the parking in the interior side lot line, this is just for building efficiency to make sure that we have an appropriate drive aisle to get vehicles in and out. It's a similar condition that's seen on other adjacent properties. So in terms of our supporting studies, I already touched on the tree protection plan. It was done to identify the significant woodland that's on town property. They did identify that American chestnut tree, which is endangered. So once we get some direction back from the ministry, we'll know if any buffering or changes to the plan are required. But although the region was withholding their comments on this, we felt it was prudent to bring this item forward to town council, members of the public, get some preliminary feedback. So while we're waiting for them, we can work on making any adjustments or clarifications that need to be done. A functional servicing report was also done by Upper Canada. In that, we've indicated that the site can be serviced in its proposed extent, both with water and sanitary, and we do have a stormwater outlet that's in Pelham Street that we'll be connecting to. And then lastly, a geotechnical report was done. There's a bit of a slope feature at the back of the property, but when we evaluate it, there would be no impact from the construction or the placement of the parking lot. And the MPCA has reviewed that study and they agree with the findings. So in terms of the public and agency comments, we submitted our slide deck a couple weeks ago as required by the town. The agencies really had no objection. We're just pending those final comments from Niagara Region. I have had the opportunity to review some of the public comments that were submitted. We were provided with them this morning. And in my conversations with town staff, it seems like there might be a couple other delegates tonight. So I'm going to reserve my comments and my replies and clarifications until every member of the public has had their chance to ask some questions, and councilors as well. I think that will be my best method of kind of trying to clarify any concerns or misunderstandings we have about the development. And then lastly, our next step, we're going to review those comments. We're going to get our clearance from the ministry to determine if any modifications to the plan are required. It'll come to town council for a decision, and if approved, then we'll move forward into the site plan application process. So those are my submissions for the application tonight. Happy to answer any questions that you have, and I will do my best to address as many public comments as I can as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowe, for your presentation. I turn to the clerk.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That does bring us to the public portion of the meeting. Our first pre-registered member was Rash Pal, and she has actually indicated to me that she felt that her written comments would stand on their own, so she indicated to me late afternoon she was not going to attend. We do have a few other members of the public that have pre-registered in the last hour, 2 hours. So if council will indulge, we'll have James Cook from the public join us. Ms. Leach is just bringing him into the meeting now. We do have 3 members in total that have pre-registered. James, we can now see you if you'd like to unmute yourself. You are in the meeting.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. If you'd like to go ahead with your verbal presentation, you are in the meeting with council.
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, I'm just making sure my mic's being weird.
Okay.
I'm a current resident at the house at 1522. I don't know what the exact, like I've been listening to your plans and I understand what you're trying to do. Again, that's totally up to you guys, what you plan to doing. But all I want to let you guys know is since I've been in this house, I've had a lot of great memories in this house. Like, this is the place where I proposed to my soon-to-be wife. This is the place where I got married at the pavilion. COVID-19 hit March 12th on my wife's father's 85th birthday. You know, he passed away here in his bed. Like, we've had some great memories, some sad memories. We've had, like, this is my home. You know, coming from a bad area of a city of Hamilton, I have enjoyed my memories very well. You know, I don't know what to say. I just want to let you guys know that the memories I've had here, I'm never going to let it go, and I don't want to lose this place.
Okay, thank you for your presentations, Mr. Cook. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next member who pre-registered from the public is Donna Fuller. So, Ms. Leach, if you could bring in Ms. Fuller, that would be great. Thank you. Hi, Donna. We can see you, but you're muted. If you could just unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you if you'd like to go ahead with your verbal presentation.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the outcome. I'm also a resident at 1522 Pelham Street. I've done a little bit of Google history on this place, and I've learned quite a bit about the home and the surrounding area. It would be a shame to see this home go. I have some ideas that I could do to the house. But it's a great neighborhood. I also agree that having such a high building would be or could be a discouragement to the area. There's a lot of beautiful homes, a lot of beautiful development around here. I just see that it would be too much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fuller.
Thank you. Our last pre-registered member of the public is Bonnie Jean Cook. Ms. Leach, if you could just bring Bonnie in, that would be great. Hi, Bonnie. You're in the meeting. You are muted. If you could just unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hi, we can hear you if you'd like to go ahead with your presentation.
Well, as my husband told you, I have a lot of memories in here. I've lived before here, I lived in a beautiful city of Oakville. It was great to me, but had some bad memories, so I had to leave. Came up here and fell in love with it ever since. I think the building would be tacky. I don't think the building would make this place any beautiful than it already is. My puppy dog loves walking around here, and I've gotten to know some of the members of the community, and I love their church down here. Quite miss it. Can't wait for COVID to end so I can go back to church and continue being part of the community. So yeah, can't wait to see what the rest of Fonthill has to offer.
Okay, and I take it that's all, Ms. Cook? Thank you for your presentation. Madam Clerk?
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Leach will just put Ms. Cook back into the waiting room, and I will just check the Town of Pelham's email address to see if anybody is emailing anything in live to clerks@pelham.ca. Just one moment, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have received 2 comments. We do have, if I can just pull them up, I will just read them into the record. We have a comment from a Carlo Michelle, and it is, "Hi, I believe that the existing infrastructure will not support a building of that size. The variants requested are far too unreasonable for a tight space such as this location. I would suggest underground parking allowing for 3 floors instead of 4. That is the first comment. The second comment is from Rush G. And it says, "Good day. May I kindly request why the needs of the builder and town needs cannot be met with a 3-story building? What is the justification for a 4-story building, especially given the adjacent buildings are also 3 stories? Thank you." Through you, Mr. Mayor, those are the 2 comments we've received in from the clerks@pelham.ca email address, and it is 6:09. If the mayor wanted to ask the agent if he had any responses or if he wanted to move into the council input section.
Okay. So Mr. Rowe, we will go back to you. Do you have any comments that you would like to make at this time to the public comments?
Thanks, Mayor Junkin. Yeah, just a couple comments to make. Maybe I'll go in reverse order here. So to the email we just had about a 4-story building instead of 3-story building, why is that being proposed? From our client's perspective, the site does work for a 4-story building. It can appropriately accommodate that amount of units. With the policy framework that's in effect, this being along an intensification corridor, it really is an appropriate location to try to get some additional residential density into the downtown area. And we feel that the controls through the urban design policies of the official plan and also the necessary site plan approval we need to get will ensure that whatever goes in there looks good. With regards, I guess, going from Rush's comments to the comments from Carlo as well, there is a significant amount of time and finances that were spent with the associated archaeological assessments of this property, went all the way up to a stage 4, which can be simply summarized as in the past, the original owners back in the 1800s tended to pile their items behind a barn or a house, and it all basically got backfilled. So there was something like 130,000 individual artifacts that were recovered. So it's a very expensive endeavor to bring the site forward and have it ready for a redevelopment application that would satisfy those policies of the municipality. Moving into Carlo's comment about the infrastructure not being able to support the building, there were recent public works that were done to Pelham Street. We do have that design information in-house. It was reviewed by our professional engineers. And based on our preliminary design, we feel that the building can be appropriately serviced with no negative impacts. And also just with regards to providing underground parking, it's a very expensive endeavor to provide underground parking. Typically, we're seeing it with apartment buildings, a minimum of 7 stories to make it financially viable. So it's not something that can be easily pursued or is viable for this property. And that in itself is limiting the amount of units that we can put on the property. In terms of the Cook's comments, certainly I can sympathize with their attachment to the home. I don't have any other real planning comments to add to that, but certainly we'll make note of that. And I would, as tenants of my client, I say certainly for them to have those conversations with them. In terms of Ms. Fuller's comments, I don't think that the building would necessarily be a discouragement. Again, we have those architectural controls and certainly open to comments and questions about how we can make the design fit in. But certainly I think building of this scale is appropriate, especially given the policy context, and it should be duly considered by council. And then the comments that were provided by Rashpal Garka are preliminarily, they are concerning to my client. Particularly the last line, if council members have had the opportunity, the threat of an appeal, provided that council approves this application. Our client doesn't take threats of appeal lightly, nor should this council. I'm not entirely sure what property that these comments are tied to. The comments were provided on behalf of a numbered corporation. To our benefit and able to respond to these concerns, I think if at all possible, to find out are these comments being provided in relation to an adjacent property? If so, where is it? How is the development impacted? I'd be happy to have those conversations and provide those clarifications. But I will say that an amendment and some of the provisions being asked for are certainly not out of the question. For example, 1518 next door actually went through the Committee of Adjustment and proceeded with a lot of the same technical variances and generally in the same scale that we are. And that was approved by the town's Committee of Adjustment. They deemed it appropriate. The difference being that this site, we're asking for the additional story, so that's why we're before you for a zoning amendment. But certainly, we are not setting a precedent here. There's already a precedent in effect, and we'd ask council and staff to perhaps review that decision and weigh what's being proposed. But again, we're open to dialogue. But certainly, if we could understand where that comment came from and what it's based on, it would be beneficial to us. I think beneficial to council as well to understand the gravity of that threat of appeal. Those are my comments for now, and certainly I'll be happy to answer any other questions of council this evening.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowe, for those comments. Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. That is all of the pre-registered members of the public, and as indicated, we haven't received any other emails to our clerks at pelham.ca email, so if you'd like to close the public portion of the meeting and move into committee input, that would be fine, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So at this time, I will close the public portion of the meeting, and we will accept no more comments online from this time on. Thank you. And now we move to committee input. Okay, so council, you've heard the presentations from our own planner, from the applicant. Do you have any questions you would like to make to either of them? And Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Craig. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just have several questions. And the first one is, there's no indication of an elevator going in, is there?
Mr. Rowe?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Corr, it is my understanding that there is an elevator that's being provided. Some of the stairwells and entrances are shown on that preliminary site plan, but the elevator will be built into that the ground area where that commercial unit is. There's an entrance to the back there to take you up into the building.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, wouldn't that mean there would be another story on top of the fourth or three story? Would there be a fourth story with the elevator shaft?
Through Mr. Mayor, the building itself will be 4 stories. You are correct. There would be a mechanical penthouse that would be required to get the elevator in there, although I believe, if I'm correct, that the town zoning bylaw does not consider that a story for the purpose of zoning. And it wouldn't be the full extent of the building, it would just be the encapsulament that they need.
Mr. Kaur? Councillor Kaur?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Craig also. You talked about a general commercial. How many units is that? And are they part of the 26 parking spots?
Through Mr. Mayor, so two parts to this, Councillor Corr. The first is there is a commercial unit that is at grade. It's 104 square meters. And then there are 21 units for residential that make up floors 2, 3, and 4. So of the 26 spaces that are provided, 21 of those, each unit will have a space dedicated for a surplus of 5. And then there will be spaces allotted. I believe 2 are being allotted to the commercial unit, and then we'll have a surplus. And then there's also the on-street parking for the convenience of folks that are using the downtown area.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Kaur, is that your question?
Well, I'll let other councillors, if
Okay.
they don't ask questions, I'll
Thank you.
ask other questions.
Okay, any other councillors at this time? Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rowe. I'm wondering about the unit lockers and things. Are they included in the apartments themselves?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the plan right now is preliminary in nature. It's my understanding that there's no common locker area that's being provided as part of this development at this time, but I can certainly convey that inquiry to the architect to see if it's possible.
Okay. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a parking spot right in front of the existing building there. Will that be maintained as well? That's a town parking spot.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Olson, provided that it's not in conflict with the driveway or any of the curb radii, yes, it's my understanding it would remain.
And through you again, Mr. Mayor, did I understand you to say that the number of parking spots may vary because of the landscape at the back of the north end of the lot there? That may not be necessary, and that could be more parking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, originally we had 2 additional parking spaces at the back, but they were taken out to provide some additional buffering. From a planning perspective on this and in discussion with town staff, we feel it's appropriate that despite the recommendations that come out of the ministry, that we continue to provide that additional buffering and protect the feature. And we feel the trade-off of a reduction in parking versus the protection of endangered species is warranted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowe. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from any councillors? I see Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this is more directed to staff. Since the building is pretty close to the lot line, how would fire department equipment get to the rear of the building?
Ms. Levac?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the fire department wouldn't require access with a vehicle to the rear of the building. They would access hydrants on Pelham Street and provide services right from Pelham Street.
So I understand the hydrant would be on the street, but this is a pretty lengthy building in itself. So how would fire truck and ladders and whatever, how would they get their equipment to the back?
My understanding is they don't need to drive their vehicles back there, that hoses would reach far enough if they require hoses back there, and that they don't actually require the need to drive fire trucks to the rear of the property.
Mr. Rowe's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Rowe.
Thanks, Mayor Junkin. To Councillor Wink, also due to the height of the building, it will be sprinklered. So we'll have sprinklers that are employed for those residential units in the commercial unit, as well as in congruence with what Ms. LaRocque is saying, an aerial suppression truck would likely get the job done paired with the sprinklers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wink. Do you have another question?
Yeah, one more question with respect to parking. We all know that parking is a premium in Pelham, particularly in the downtown area. It's rather limited, and to put another building up, and excuse me on this one, but if Welland has one parking spot to every unit, quite frankly, that doesn't concern me. I'm concerned about Pelham. And currently the requirement is 1.5. I have concerns about going to 1.2.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Councillor. Any comment from you on that, on the parking, Mr. Rowe?
Thanks, Mayor Junkin. To Councillor Wink, yes, certainly understand the point. We're not in Welland, we are in Pelham. It's our opinion right now that the site works and can provide an adequate amount of parking, but certainly as we go through the rest of the comments on this, and if adjustments need to be made to the building, whether the reduction of units or if we can use a little bit more of that landscape area, of course, we'll make every effort to provide as much parking as reasonably possible and as safely as possible on the property.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rowe. Any other councillors? I see Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, so with regards to these residential units, are they for purchase or for rental for these 1 and 2 bedrooms?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hahn, it's to be determined right now. They haven't, or our clients haven't made a determination if they would like to go condominium or not. I think that's a decision that's a little ways away, but I would just say that even if it is condominiumized, it doesn't preclude the ability to still rent them out.
Further to that then, Craig, also too then, are any of these units going to be dedicated as affordable housing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time it is my understanding that none are, but I can certainly convey that question to our client. I will just note generally apartment dwellings, these aren't really overly sized units. Comparably to some of the larger detached development we're seeing in Fawn Hill, these would be relatively more affordable in my opinion than some of those larger properties that are being developed in the town.
But not actually deemed affordable housing as per the guidelines set by the region.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at this time, no, not under the definition of the act.
Okay, and then last question is, who is the builder of this property?
Through Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hahn, currently the project is owned by our client JMT Development. We don't have an indication if they will be constructing this or they will be joining a venture with a contractor. First and foremost, we need to understand the parameters of the building and how it can be constructed, and moving into site plan. At that point, we'll have a better indication of what they'd like to do.
Okay, and is this JNT, is that a local builder?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Hahn, yes, it's a partnership of local developers that are local to Niagara.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? I see Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, a couple of comments. I feel the height of it is excessive, considering what is surrounding it, and again, the parking consideration. There's not enough parking. I don't care about other municipalities, as Mr. Wink said. We have a parking shortage. I feel there's not enough parking for the residential units, and there's no allowance there for the commercial units. It's excessive. And, I understand that builders are in business to make money. They're not providing housing as a generous contribution to the town. But sometimes it has to be reined in a little and make it palatable to the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other councillor have a question? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Rowe. I was surprised to learn that the elevator shaft would be going on top. There are elevators that don't have to go on top, but when you put an elevator on top, essentially it's a 5-story building. Even with a 4-story building, the parking requirements in the town cannot be met. So comparing it to other municipalities doesn't work for me, just like Councillor Wink mentioned and Councillor Stewart mentioned. Therefore, I think the reduction should be to a 3-story building. That, to me, probably makes all your variances work. So in general, those are my comments. With regards to intensification, we have to be very careful there when you quote the regional policy, because we also have a policy in our town plan which calls for intensification targets. And we as council are still waiting for that report. So justifying it on intensification won't be approved by me until I see that other report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any comments, Mr. Rowe, to those comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, certainly can respect that opinion of the councillor. The only clarification I would provide, and maybe staff can speak with Councillor Hildebrand offline, we may be able to talk more about the elevator. I'm just providing a preliminary opinion based on preliminary architectural plans. Typically, it's a small mechanical penthouse that's on the top. It doesn't constitute a story of development, and nor would it have any impact on the parking requirements, just as a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you, sir. Back to you, Councillor Kaur.
Yes, my final question to Mr. Rowe is, how many handicap parking spots? You didn't indicate that.
Mayor, jumped into Councillor Kaur. We're showing one accessible parking space that's provided. On the site plan drawing, if you have it handy, it's right at the back of the base of the commercial unit for convenient access up into the building barrier free.
And to follow up with that, you said one. What happens? You have one disability person living in there. Where's the next person park?
Through Mr. Mayor, the arrangement of the dedication of the parking spaces can be managed later on. Sometimes what we see with apartment buildings is people that are moving in outline their needs for parking. If they do require an accessible space, that becomes their dedicated space. We can look at the site plan in a little bit greater detail to provide some additional flexibility, maybe to be able to flex a spot here and there. Certainly we want to get that sorted out before the zoning approval came forward. But as required by the bylaw right now, it's just one space that we need to provide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from, say, Councillor Hahn?
Through the mayor, yes, last question with regards to parking for me, and that is with regards to visitor parking. So not counting the 2 parking spaces underground or at ground level that you mentioned for commercial, how many visitor parking stalls will there be for those people that are visiting people that live in the building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, based on the plan right now, we would have an excess of 3 parking spaces that could be used for visitor. And I would just qualify that with, there's also on-street parking available. And given that this is an intensification corridor in a walkable area of downtown, and also served by public transit, we factored that into making a decision on how best to provide the parking. We think that it's reasonable to expect that there may be individuals living here who may not require those parking spaces.
Okay, so 3 stalls, because you can't count the town of Pelham's stalls on the street as yours. So then it would be 3 visitor stalls. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments? No, Councillor Corr.
Yes, one final question, and I don't know who to direct it to. How old is the existing building on site?
Mr. Rowe, do you have any idea or not?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, let me check my planning report. Actually, it might be in the, I don't have it handy right now.
Okay.
It is older. I think the original frame of the property, because of its heritage classification, I think it may be from the 1800s. It has been modified. The garage is newer. I think that's from maybe the 50s. But the archaeological report, I think, provides some heritage dating for the property. They did a pretty extensive overview when they're doing the archaeological assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will ask the town planning director, Ms. Luak, any comment on the age of the building, Ms. Luak?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the exact age of it available right now, but what we'll do is we'll include a summary of the history in the report that council will receive later.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, any other questions, comments by committee? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. That does bring us to the presentations of resolutions. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Olson that committee receive report 2021-17 for information as pertains to file number AM 10-20, and that committee direct planning staff to prepare the recommendation report on this topic for council's consideration once all comments have been received. For the vote, Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Hahn that committee receive the applicant's presentation for information. For the vote, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Wink that committee receive the written correspondence as listed on the agenda, and that committee receive the verbal presentations made by the public listed on the agenda, and that committee receive any email comments received by the public portion of the meeting at the clerks@pelham.ca email. Just for clarification, receiving the verbal presentations will include the presentations from James Cook, Donna Fuller, and Bonnie Jean Cook. For the vote, Councillor Corr.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. I have a motion put forth by Councillor Corr that this special committee of the whole public meeting under the Planning Act be adjourned It is 6:34 p.m. and for the vote, Councillor Olson,
Yes?
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, you may gavel out the meeting.
Before we do that, we'd just like to, council would like to tell everyone that we appreciate your presentations tonight, both from town staff and from the consultant, the applicant, and wish everyone a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.